it's monitoring students' learning, and it happens constantly, which means all the time. Then again, in this form of assessment, there is no grading. And then again, it's used to check the progress of students, maybe through giving them homework or assignments or whatever. And then again, for the summative assessment, you guys have mentioned that it's a way to evaluate what the students have attained by the end of a course or a unit or a semester or whatever. And then again, you gave an example of the ELT exam that we had a couple of months ago. That was a summative assessment to assess your knowledge and ability to use and put into context the concepts that you've learned during the soft skills module, right? At some point, we will have another one like that for sure. Then again, yes, Suad.
Can we say that evaluation is part from both the summative and the formative assessment? Both of them you are going to use evaluation tools, but one of them is its purpose is to assign grades and that's it. The other one, the purpose of it is to collect data about students and in order to adjust your teaching methods.
Cool. That's a great question. Again, I also heard Yusuf phrase that a couple of times about evaluation, difference between evaluation and summative assessment. Personally, and this is again something personal, maybe it's wrong, maybe it's right. And again, we could go back to research about that. Evaluation is not a something which is separate, that stands by itself. Again, I consider it just a word, just another term for assessment. You know, it could go with summative assessment as well as formative assessment, as well as any other assessment that might exist. Evaluation is just a term to talk about something, a tool that you're using to, assess how your students are doing. Yes, Isam.
Yeah, I just wanted to say the same thing, because when we go to the terminology of it, to assess something is to evaluate it. It's just that the tools we use to measure the progress of students is different, and the amount of progress we measure is different, because for the affirmative assessment, we measure just like a short period. When it comes to a summative one, we measure like the whole school year or the whole unit, like a big chunk. That's it.
Perfect. Exactly. Wonderful. Then again, let's try to go through what has been written in books about these two concepts. And then we'll try to keep it very simple. Again, what you guys have mentioned so far, all of what you said is in the research, is in the literature about formative assessment and summative assessment. Then again, traditionally speaking, AFL has been closely linked with, formative assessment, because practices such as questioning and providing feedback help form or shape students' learning. Again, there's not a big difference between formative assessment and summative assessment in a way, because again, as Suad mentioned in the beginning, when we're doing formative assessment, we're not using grades. And that's probably the only difference, the only major difference between the, both of the types of assessment. Then again, summative assessment, as you guys said, happens at the end of something, happens at the end of a unit, at the end of a course, at the end of the term, at the end of whatever. So it's an assessment that students are aware of. They do it while they know that they are sitting down and taking, for example, an exam, or they're sitting down for an oral, or they're doing a portfolio, or whatever. So they are aware of the fact that they are being assessed. Then again, formative assessment, the student might be aware just as much as they won't probably be aware, because we're not doing all the time in class an assessment that the student know about. Probably it's just a discussion. And for the students, it's just a discussion. But for you, you are probably trying to work out data about how the students' fluency is, how they are using vocabulary that you've learned. Is there any progress in terms of their maybe spoken English, or maybe in terms of their public speaking skills? whatever your objective is. Okay, so there are commonalities and there are differences between both types of assessments. And again, I do not consider them to be one better than the other. I consider them to be complementing each other in a way, because we cannot do just formative assessment. At the end of something, we must do summative assessment. This is how the system works. So instead of fighting the system, let's just make everything work together. Because when you fight things, really nothing comes out of it. You just give yourself a headache. So just accept the system as it is and try to work yourself around it and be as flexible as possible in making your work journey as healthy as it could be. These are, again, some examples of formative and summative assessment. Again, both of these concepts, both of these terms, or both of these processes could be informal or could be formal. Informal in a way that, the example that I just mentioned a couple of seconds ago, where you're maybe doing a discussion and you're trying to figure out certain skills or certain objectives, have they been attained? Then again, sorry, in summative assessment, portfolios are most commonly informal because they are up to the student to do however they like, right? However, at the same time, portfolios could be formal, dependent on whether there is a structure, on whether there are objectives to be respected, on whether, there are a lot of things that take place when discussing portfolios. Again, you are going to receive an evaluation form of how portfolios are or should look like by the end. So far, you are given the freedom to work on it however you would like to. It's informal, but in a couple of weeks' time, it's going to move into the formal context because you're going to receive a grid and you're going to check mark what are the things that I've actually done and what are the things that I need to do, if there are any. Again, it's easier to work when you're working on something creatively, however you'd like. So I do not want you to feel pressed or let's say controlled by a grid. So now you're really free to do it however you'd like to do it. And then maybe something that you've done in your portfolio goes beyond what's in the grid. If it is great and wonderful, we could actually add it or take it into consideration or whatever. So just be as creative as you want. Then again, formal assessment could be in the formative as well as the summative. For example, you could further analyze tests, exams. For instance, you would ask students to write essays or paragraphs or whatever you're working on. Then again, there's something that we do in class sometimes, not most of the time, not a lot of teachers like to do it. I'm one of them, which is doing, what is that? Dialogues in class. So teachers like to take a dialogue and put students in the context of the language that they're learning. It's more of bringing the language to life, in a sense. So this is also a means of formative assessment, which is also formal, because you're asking students to prepare in advance, and they are well aware that once they're standing there, they're going to be evaluated, whether by you as the teacher or via peer assessment, where students are given feedback to each other. Again, there are many forms of this. But again, as Suad mentioned before, there is no grading. Then again, for the summative assessment, as you guys have mentioned, there are exams, tests, or essays in controlled conditions. Again, essay could be write however you want. That's formative. In a controlled condition, this is what you should do, this is what it should include. Then again, if we consider a paragraph, you would ask a student, or you would ask your students, could you write a paragraph about the weather today? Very simple. But then if you control it a little bit more and you would say, write a paragraph about the weather today, but I need you to use a topic sentence and then support ideas and then a concluding sentence. I need you to respect punctuation, good punctuation at the end of every section in your paragraph. I also need you to respect capitalization. So here you're controlling how the students are working. Same topic, but different instructions. Beautiful. Right. To sum up this section actually, and not to try and go into philosophical discussions about formative assessment and summative assessment, AFL is not about what you're using in class. It's not about whether it's formative or summative. It's not about using the communicative or the grammar translation approach. It's not about none of those. Again, AFL is about the importance of assessing throughout the learning process or throughout the teaching process, assessing how the students are learning and also assessing how you are teaching. So in a way, you're becoming a form of an artificial intelligence. You are always on the look for new information, for new data, to know how to manage your class more, to know how to better give your students instructions or help them achieve the learning objectives that you are setting for the class.